Matt Squires, welcome to the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. What is going on, brother?
How you doing, my friend? Everything is well.
Love hearing it. I'm doing awesome. I am honored and grateful to have you on the show. This has been a long time coming. And you just recently concluded a year of coaching with our Smart Nutrition Coaching Program and Coach Joey specifically. And we have a couple of things coming up that I really wanted to share with our listeners here. But just generally speaking, is you had a pretty profound journey, I guess you could say, over the last year. You had some great results. And I think that, and I'll obviously let you do justice to explaining what exactly that means, but I think you had as much of a, not just a physical change, but obviously like a mental, emotional change. And so I wanted to be able to share that. So again, thank you for coming on. So do me a favor, Matt, just give us a really brief kind of idea of who you are, what you do, and kind of why you decided to join the Smart Nutrition Coaching Program.
Yeah. First and foremost, I want to, just take a step back and just say thank you for everything. Thank you to, your friendship and your guidance through the way, Christina, Joey, the rest of the BSL coaches, the impact that you guys and your team had on this, what I call a journey more so than a diet, was something that I didn't expect. And I'm forever grateful for it. There's a lot of stuff that we'll kind of touch on as to what the reasons were, but I really needed kind of that kick as in the butt that said, hey, it's time to do it. And the program gave me that opportunity to create this, this discipline that it was going to take in order for it to, in order to be successful. But I just wanted to, thank you and everyone else. And even the BSL community, I wasn't able to attend the calls as often as I would have liked. But at the same time, knowing that I had that community there to be able to share and touch base with and talk about it was just invaluable to my success. So thank you very much for that.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for doing the work.
Yeah. A little bit about me. I work in software development, and I've done a lot of stuff in the business space over the years. So primarily my discipline is in business and finance. When I was an undergraduate, I studied to be a physical therapist, which is anatomy, physiology, chemistry, those types of things. But organic chemistry proved to be a little bit too difficult for me to grasp.
Gross.
So as a result, here I am. I am not a
Right.
physical therapist, but that was my goal all along. And then I have my master's study was in adult learning and human behaviorism, and so I tailored a lot of my stuff. It's kind of more of was an alternative to an MBA that enabled me to kind of look into human behaviorism a little bit more and that kind of thing. So that's a little bit about me. Obviously, you and I played rugby for a very long time. I had an illustrious career where I played for about 20 years, but the last 10 or so were just having fun playing on a travel team.
How about family?
The family, I have a wife and 2 children. My children are 10 and 12, soon to be 13, going on 30, as most 13-year-olds are. And I work from home, and we live in a small little community where I don't really venture out much, with the exception of the occasional kids kids But other than that, you can find me on the golf course, south mountain hiking, or at my house.
Yeah, you and I don't differ, and we don't differ that much. So last November, November 21, right? We had our inaugural Elevate workshop, or BSL Nutrition workshop, in person in Scottsdale. And what made you attend the workshop in the first place? And then you stood up at one point during the workshop and you shared why, because we talked a lot about why it was important for you to be in the room, what your journey was going to look like moving forward, why it was so important for you to make change in your life. And I'd love to know, and for you to share kind of what was going through your head at that time, and then what was the impetus for you to join the coaching program from there.
I've kind of yo-yoed back and forth with some diets. And, one of the things that, like in the past that I never did is I never really was successful in that. I kind of would gain the weight back because I allowed certain things to kind of interfere life, in general, but certain things within my life. And I allowed those things to interfere with goals. And one of the things that stood out for me during the Elevate was there was something that was discussed, and I can't remember, I believe it was you, it might have been Joey, that talked about the metabolism and how it's a survival and, a survival mechanism. Right. And how your metabolism, at times, if you don't understand it as this like survival mechanism, that when you go through these diets and you treat it as a diet, you're not really giving yourself the time that is required, the slow roll, the progression to where allows your body to get used to it. Most of the times that I've done it were kind of flash things through like interval training classes that I was attending, were weight loss challenges that were maybe 2 months long, 3 months long, and I was able to shed a lot of weight, but a couple months later, there it was. Right. So in November 21, I had just come off of a pretty rough, about 24 months, but in 21 itself, I lost my dog of 14 years. I lost my dad. I had total reconstructive surgery on my shoulder. And I spent the summer just really kind of wondering what's going on. What am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? And spend a lot of time at home, as I mentioned, and a lot of time thinking. And one of the things that kind of stuck out was you gave me the opportunity to attend. You invited me, and it was just the right time for me. And it was one of those moments where I talked to my wife about it. The commitment to it is a year commitment, and that year commitment isn't just going to be macro. There's a lot of things that require discipline to make the commitment, and in particular commitment for that period of time. And it started to kind of sink in that it was something that I just needed to do. I was dealing with a tremendous amount of loss, tremendous amount of sorrow. I use anger, as you know, to get through a lot of things. And some people turn to different emotions. I happen to turn to anger when it comes to emotions. And I use that emotion to help me kind of level set with things and to concentrate more. And I was just tired of that. I was tired of that mentality of, how am I going to challenge this? And then getting mad at it, and then being mad all the time because I had so many damn challenges. So as we're sitting there, I realized, I looked around the room and I saw a lot of people, a lot of vulnerable faces that were willing to share their vulnerabilities in a way that enabled them to make it a strength. And, I mentioned after this most recent one that, I was standing there in that room and you asked me to do a video. You asked everyone to do like a testimonial to themselves, like, here's a video, record it, send it to me, share it with me. I'd like to know. It was kind of one of those things where I'm there by myself. I know you and Christina in the room, and there was a few other, familiar faces, but wasn't anyone that I would, technically be sitting there hugging it out and sharing my vulnerabilities with. But I looked around the room and I saw that everyone there was willing to do the same thing as I was. And some of them had already started. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to be honest with everyone in this room, because if I can be honest with everyone in this room, and I can be vulnerable like they are, I can turn this vulnerability that I have into a strength. And so I stood up and I shared my story. And my story was what I already, mentioned too, with the grief that I was dealing with, but it's also my struggle with alcohol. And, there was a few people up there and that were saying, oh, I didn't let Ben take my alcohol away. And that's fine. That you understood, like, hey, not everyone's going to be able to do that. But that was November, the middle of November. And I started the program. And, the first part of it, that first phase is kind of like, let's just get a feel for what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then we can then build a coaching plan around it. And I was, I found myself walking all the time, which was great. I love trail running and I do a lot of trail running on South Mountain, but I found myself walking more. And in those periods of walking, because I work from home, I don't get a chance to do a lot of the normal walking that people do. So in order for me to get my steps in, I had to go for a long walk every day. And most of November and December, I'm just sitting there and I'm walking and I'm, thinking to myself, what am I looking for? How is this going to be different? How am I going to make this opportunity any different from the other one? And a big part of that was I was dealing with a lot of, a lot of grief, but also a lot of discontent, a lot of different emotions that were, anxiety, those types of things that, okay, so let's talk about what are causing these things, what causes, your anxiety. And I start looking at it and I start identifying things. And, the sooner you can identify them, the sooner you can start to understand them. As I mentioned, my anger issues in the past, I studied Buddhism in college. That's just like no one's, happier than the Dalai Lama. Why is he so happy? Maybe I can learn something from him. And I read a book called Healing Anger. It talked about how patience is a big part of life, and a patience is something that you have to leverage and understand that when you're in these times that you're starting to get angry, you have to be more patient with the situation. But more importantly, what you have to do is you have to figure out what was it that made you so angry, and then go back and afterwards and reflect on that and think about. And most likely it's going to lead to this patience problem that you have. If you weren't patient with the situation, but you're identifying it, you see it coming. The next time it comes around, you see it coming and you're able to say, that was the cause right there. I see that it's coming, and I'm going to catch that, and I'm going to be more patient in this situation. And so as I'm doing this exercise, this kind of meditative walking, I started to realize that a lot of the issues that I had in my life stemmed from and I'm going to use the term honestly, the abuse of alcohol. Did I drink in excess every night? No, but I drank every night. Mm-hmm. And, and it was like, sure, I would take a day off every, week or every 10 days or whatever, but I didn't have a lot, but as I'm sitting there and I'm going through my tracking, I found myself in the month of December, setting aside, 750 to 1,000 calories so that I didn't hit my number for my alcohol consumption. And so that first kind of, I guess you could call it like an aha moment, but that wake up is like, now you're paying attention to how much you're drinking, and you see, how much you're drinking. It doesn't seem like a lot when it's one night a week, but when you go 7 days and then you have to, at the end of the week, have your call with Joey, and, he takes a look at it and is like, you had alcohol X number of days. Like you cut this many grams of protein out of your intake, your weekly intake, simply so you could have this alcohol. Like, is that the best thing for you? Is that what you're looking for? And, is that your goal here? And so as I started to progress through that and go through those, those meetings and those walking phases, and I started to realize that, there's going to be a time when the doctor's going to tell me, you can't drink anymore, dude, you're done. And I didn't want that, and I didn't want someone to tell me that I couldn't. I wanted to be strong enough to do it myself. And all this is, all this is happening as I'm experiencing these changes in my diet and changes in my exercise. And the exercise was a different type of exercise. It wasn't that I was doing any less or any more. It was just, I just kind of changed it up a little bit. And so I was at a football game, a Cardinals football game, and I was driving home with my mother-in-law. She was in the car, and I had a few beers because it was the end of the season, and I had to get a few beers in me. And I happened to notice that I was using profanity a little bit more than I chose, normally. And I just came to the realization in the car, like, I wouldn't normally talk like this in front of my mother-in-law. This is the sweetest saint of a human being that's ever existed. And
as all mother-in-laws are.
Yeah. So here I am, and I'm like, all right, wait a second here, and that after this constant walking and thinking, I started to think maybe this wasn't the best thing for me to carry on down this path. And so I made a decision shortly after that. About 2 days later, I made the conscious decision in my mind to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And I was going to take a year break. I used the term abstinence because it was willful. My wife wasn't asking me to. My family wasn't asking me to. A judge didn't tell me I had to. It was, I chose the term and I used the term abstinence because it was my choice. But I was scared that I'm like hyper disciplined about certain things. I'm a dumpster fire when it comes to some things. But when I set my mind to it, when I become disciplined, I leverage that absolutely to the hilt. And I was nervous. I didn't know if I had the willpower and the strength in me to do it. I knew that I had the community. I had my BSL community with me. I had my family. Unfortunately, I didn't have, my friends in the sense of, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, but like the culture that I was living in prevented me from being able to be successful. It wasn't an environment that was conducive to success when it came to alcohol consumption. So it took me a few days to think about it. And our friend in New Zealand and I had a conversation that we've had several times in the past about, this. So he was kind of the first person that I didn't tell him what my plans were, but I had a conversation with him over one of our late night Saturday night video game sessions. And I was just like, kind of feeling it out and talking to him about it because he's non-alcoholic and he's been for a while.
Right.
And so I made the decision that if going to like back to what Joey was saying is write it down, and everyone says if you have a goal, write it down. So I was like, I got to write this down. And the way I did it was I took a New Year's card. Every year for New Year's, my wife and my kids, we have a little dinner party. Everyone gets dressed up. We put out hors d'oeuvres. We put out sparkling cider and champagne on this particular night. We kind of set it up and we have ourselves our own little New Year's Eve celebration and we celebrate New Year's as a family. So I nervously wrote this down on a card and I gave it to my wife and family. And I put it in a kind of ceremonial place because I knew that if I did this, if I made this commitment to them, I would not break that commitment. It was easy for me to break it to myself because I had in the past, I'd taken 2 months off here, 3 months off there, but it was like, oh, it's not, it's not paying dividends. I didn't see the end result. And so I wrote this note to my family and I said to them, I have chosen to abstain from alcohol for the year of 2022. And I'm doing this for health reasons, as well as, to make myself happier, mental and physical health, but also for the family and also for a lot of reasons. And I wrote the letter and didn't really think too much about it. I wrote it a few hours before dinner and I presented it at dinner and it had a significant impact on my family. My daughter was 11 at the time and was kind of looking at it like, I didn't really know if she knew what that meant, but her reaction was one of those things where I was like, all right, I know that with this, with that reaction and how much it meant to her, I knew that it wasn't going to be a problem at all. And, I had my final glass of champagne. I toasted the new year and I said, here's to health and happiness. And, what transpired after that was beyond my wildest dreams. I just did, I'm not going to drink today. And, that was January 1st and the football games and all that kind of stuff. And you look at it and you're like, oh, I made this choice. I'm doing this, to be healthier. I'm doing this for my family. And it took a little bit of time. It took saying that to, over and over again. I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing it for my family. It was always for me, but it was the result of the family. And, what I wanted to do and what my end goal was to be healthier and happier, but also to reassess my relationship with alcohol. My relationship with alcohol at the time was something that was a little bit more than I was comfortable with. And, I had to, figure out the culture of the people that I was around. And, there was a lot of things that transpired from those events that, led the year to be one of the most successful years that I've had. And I rebranded myself in a lot of ways, and I don't normally have a beard. I I don't normally have long hippie hair, but it's just little things. I was like, I'm just going to change my appearance a little bit. I'm going to be a different Matt than I was
Yeah.
in 2022 or 2021, and so
Yeah.
the effects that I had mentally, physically, were far exceeded my expectations. But more importantly, it took a lot of discipline, but the mental piece of it is what I got the most out of. The physical transformation that I did that's a guarantee with your program. The physical transformation is a guarantee. I mean, if people listen to you and follow your instructions and follow what the coaches are saying, they are guaranteed to have success with the program. But the mental piece of it was different, and that was what I didn't expect.
I appreciate you sharing all of that, and I applaud you on your efforts. So here we are, close to a year later. I'm assuming you've been alcohol-free for the entirety of this year. And so help us understand what the mental, the positive mental aspects have been from eliminating alcohol for the year in conjunction, obviously, with the coaching program. But what have the results been? What has really surprised you about the process?
The physical ones that I can touch on kind of quickly. There are things like resting heart rate. My average resting heart rate when I was drinking was high 60s, like 66 to like 68, sometimes even like 71, 72 if it was like a bender night.
Yeah.
And the last 12 months, my average has been between 49 and 50.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
When you think about that, the heart is a finite resource. You only get a certain number of pumps. And when you start looking at it and saying, okay, in this 1 year, I added an extra 20% to 25% onto my life. It was you just in and of itself. It's like, if you want to live longer, well, then you need to, you're sure anyone can die doing an accident. But if you think about dying of old age or your heart, that kind of thing, you got to start taking care of that. And, with that was a big part of it was hormones. And so when you think about alcohol affects hormones, not a lot of men are talking about hormones. A lot of men like to talk about their, T-score or they're like, oh, I have high testosterone or I have low testosterone,
Right.
But testosterone isn't the only hormone that we have. And so, the effect that it had on my hormones where all of a sudden, there was a balance there that I hadn't had prior to the abstinence. And so once I got those things in order, all of a sudden I didn't feel the anxiety. Mental clarity was there, and a level that it's not like I was a genius or anything before, and I'm not a genius now. It's just the mental clarity that I had was significantly greater. I was performing better at work. The tasks were a lot easier. Mornings were a lot better. And so mentally, one of the challenges was, how am I going to? Okay, so now I work from home. I don't socialize a ton, but I do socialize sometimes. How am I going to go to my favorite thing, the golf tournament? Like the TPC at Scottsdale is one of my favorite things you could do. How am I going to do that without alcohol? I would go to Maui every year, and we did, so 3 months into my, abstinence, sobriety, whatever you want to call it, we go to Hawaii, and we go to Hawaii with a family group that every day at 4:00, we're done golfing, we're done swimming, we're doing playing. And they're at happy hour, right? And it's like, how am I going to react there? Right. And it was during that time where I started to look at the culture of drinking, and the culture that I was living in and surrounding myself with. There's nothing wrong with those people. They might not have a problem with alcohol. They might not be abusing like I am, but I am. I was, and I did. So when I get there and I start making those changes, all of a sudden I start feeling a little bit better, because it's like a little mini challenge. As I mentioned, I love video games, and I love challenges, these little mini missions that you do. And I started treating it like that and turning it into a game. And it was always going to be that I was going to do it. I didn't want to be miserable while I was doing it. I wanted to be happy while I was doing it. So, I was never going to break my promise. But, it was going to be challenging, and I didn't want to be miserable while I was doing it. So I made a little game out of it at times. And every time someone said, why aren't you drinking? Our friend in New Zealand pointed out that, you ask them, why are they? And you get someone who's asking, well, why aren't you drinking? Because I don't feel like it, but why are you? You know, you can say whatever you want, but the reality is
Mm-hmm.
you don't need a reason.
Correct.
You know, you just need to just sit there and be like, ah. So the first couple of months, as I mentioned, you know, my brand was, I'm a ex-rugby player who loves to drink beer, and I can drink and drink and drink. You know, I can throw them away. You've seen it. And I just was like, yeah, I need to rebrand myself. I need to change the way people think about me and the way people look at me, so that the first time they see me, they might say to me, hey, you know, why aren't you drinking? The next time they see me, hey, how's it going? Are you still not drinking? And then, you know, they start getting a little inquisitive. So you only see them a few times a year, but they're like, so what has changed? And, you know, and I tell them about the happiness that I've had. I have another
Mm-hmm.
really good friend in LA who, he's been sober for a few years now. And, you know, I sat down with him and I talked to him about, you know, great length for about an hour, hour and a half. And very early on, and asked him, you know, like, how was your experience? What did you go through? And so, you know, I reached out to people and I leveraged just the same way as if I was trying to be successful in business. You know, I'm going to reach out to these people and I'm going to ask them questions so that I can be successful in this, you know, adventure that I'm on. And I like to, you know, I like to say when people ask, oh, how's the diet? I'm like, I'm not on a diet. I'm on a health journey, you know, and journeys take a while. I don't consider your program a diet. I consider your program a health journey. And I would always correct them and be like, you mean my journey? My journey is going great. It's an adventure. You know, every day is different. Every day is new. But one thing that happened, and it consistently happened, was over time, I changed my brand to an extent. Not everyone, you know, that I see all the time. I'm sure if I ran into someone who hasn't seen me in a while, they would still think of me as, you know, being this beer drinking fool. But you know, the people that I'm close to and that see me all the time, my true community, started to notice a difference. I'm in a men's group and a men's league in golf, and every month they would come up to me and be like, dude, you know, what happened? What are you doing? How did you do that? And then the first few months, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know, it goes back to, they now know that I'm doing this, I'm on this journey, and they want to know how it's going, and they care for people. Are very caring by nature. And I had a lot of very good people that asked and wanted to know. And so mentally, you know, 6 months into it, it went from being this, like, I got to explain myself to everyone every time. I'm not drinking because, you know, in reality, my liver's shot and I need to not drink so I can let my liver recover. You know, I didn't go into that detail with them, but, you know, I basically said for health reasons. And then 6 months into it, 7 months into it, people are coming up and saying, man, you look amazing. Like, you know, I lost in your program. I think I started at 230 right before the first elevate. And then I got down to 193. So, you know, 37 pounds was great. And I'm still to this day, you know, we're, you know, several, I guess that was a little over a month ago since that. But I'm actually, you know, I'm maintaining my weight right now. Because if I don't, I'll continue to lose more, because the program that you put me on taught me and educated me about the food that I was, you know, should be eating, the amount of food that I should be eating. And it got to the point where I was actually losing more than I wanted to. I have a giant head and it looks like a, you know, a blow pop. I got this big head on a white stick of a body. And, you know, I'm like, hey, I got to pump the brakes here a little bit. I actually have been trying to eat more to maintain that weight because you know, it's like I want to be mindful of it, but I also, you know, don't want to be too skinny because of my giant head. But, you know, over that time, it was just, I had to, you know, address the culture issue. I had to address the branding issue, you know, but more importantly, I had to be, you know, I had to be disciplined all the time. And my older brother came up to me at Christmas and he's like, so you're telling me you, for the last 12 months, haven't had even like a little sip of wine at dinner? And I was like, you know what? I even quit drinking kombucha because I found out that it had alcohol, you know, and because it was just one of those that had a small amount and I didn't realize it. But I'm like, no, I haven't had a sip. I told my family I wouldn't. I told myself that I wouldn't. And so as a result, you know, I was able to be disciplined in my approach and change all of those variables that were causing unhappiness, and try to be a role model for friends that are looking to do the same, and members of the community that are looking to do the same. And I, you know, a role model in the sense of like, hey, Anyone can do this. It takes discipline. It takes commitment. But more importantly, all that stuff doesn't matter when you are happier and healthier and living a better life. All those other things, that little bit of fun that you have on a Saturday night that you might miss out on, you're not going to miss out on. Because my dad said it best at my wedding. I said, it's just too bad that you can't sit here and toast with me and have a drink. And he's like, well, you think I need a drink to celebrate you? I don't need a drink to celebrate you. I love you and I celebrate you every day. Just that little thing. That was, almost 20 years ago. And he said it's going to stick to me every day. And I look at it, I'm like, you just don't necessarily need alcohol to celebrate. Will I drink again? Yes, that is my plan. By reassess my relationship with alcohol. But will I ever continue to, or jump back on when, January 1st, I probably won't have a drink because I don't feel the need to. So I won't be worrying about that, in the future. There's a few times when I had bad dreams, and I realized when you wake up in the middle of the night, you're dreaming about the fact that you drank last night, and now you feel like you let your family down. I'm like, well, that's pretty big. Like, that's not good.
Right.
That means that I'm not there yet. And I haven't had any of those dreams in several months, but the fact that they existed are proof that, I was dealing with a problem that I needed to get under control.
Yeah, man, I applaud you so much for your efforts over the past year, but more so is just identifying with the fact that and really diving into rebranding yourself, as you say, and appreciate that so much. One of the things we talk about a lot with our coaching program is the need to become your own best nutrition detective. And I think you understanding the program now is it goes far and above just the X's and O's of calorie intake. But truly the people that are the most successful, like you, that are really making lifestyle change are the ones that are acknowledging the nuances of their daily behaviors and the behaviors that are serving them and the behaviors that aren't serving them, and choosing to make change to those behaviors, because truly it's not the food that's the problem, right? It's not necessarily the exercise that's the problem. It's all of the behaviors and stressors, it's anxiety and situations and social support or lack thereof that we put ourselves into that contribute to the reasons why we make the decisions that we do, be it alcohol, be it sugar, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It all has the same chemical reaction in the brain, so to speak. And so for you to acknowledge that right out of the gate and commit to making that level of change in your life is considerable. And so, Matt, what would life look like? How would it look different had you not decided to make change?
I would be the same old miserable dude sitting in South Tempe, just wondering, what do I need to do to get out of this rut? I would be in the same situation. I wouldn't have been as successful with my weight loss and the weight loss journey. I wouldn't have been as successful mentally. I would have felt better because I would have lost some weight. There's no question. As I said, I was losing weight and drinking alcohol at the same time on your program, but I wouldn't have been as successful. And more importantly, I wouldn't have been as happy. And this year has been a challenge at the beginning for the first maybe 60 days. And there were a few challenges along the way, but that commitment that I made to myself made it so much easier and made it so much more worth it. As we worked tirelessly on the field together, and we went through drills and we did everything, and we wondered, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this to myself? And then we go to, a game and we outperform everyone on the field by, a ridiculous amount. And we start to look around and we realize that, the fruits of our labor are when we plant the seed, and we have to be mindful about that approach. But it takes discipline, it takes strength, inner and outer strength to be able to do a lot of these things. But I wouldn't be where I am. I'd be miserable, anxiety ridden, probably at this point. It got to the point where it was strongly recommended, like, hey, you should probably go see a doctor to maybe get on some medication. And I told myself, before I get on medication, I got to try this one last thing. And that one last thing was to just go sober. And I say sober now because in reality, that's what it was. I use the term abstaining from alcohol because my plan is that I'm not going to be sober forever, but I've been 100% sober since 1/1 of 22, and come 1/1 of 23, I'll probably still be.
Right.
As a result of all the changes that I made over the year, but more importantly, the long-term goals that I've set for myself.
So if there's anyone listening to this, Matt, that might be considering or in their head thinking, I probably have a problem with alcohol, or considering the benefits that could come from giving them a period of time of abstinence, what would you say to them?
Yeah, what I would say to them is, if you think you have a problem, you do. That's not a show of you're not a bad person as a result of it. But if you think you do, you do. But more importantly, even if you don't think you do, and you want to, just because you want to, experiment with it, my feeling is that you have to take an amount of time, and you have to dedicate a significant amount of time to it. I would say that 6 months to a year is how long it takes. Yeah, they say it takes 21 days to break a habit. Look, I did dry Januaries, I did no booze November, and all of those, and whatever. I've done those, and I went right back to the old ways. But don't be afraid, first and foremost, because fear is something that we control. Danger is real, but fear is in our mind. And we can control how we are afraid of something and whether or not we're afraid of something, because we have the mind and the willpower and the body and the spirit to be able to get over fear. Danger is standing too close to the edge and fall and being, that's real. Fear is something that's a construct of our mind. So if you're afraid of, and you think you're afraid of doing something, challenge yourself mentally and say to yourself, I'm not afraid of just about anything. So, and I can get over any fear because I can control it. I can control how I react to my fears, and maybe take that as your first step. But if you're, looking to do it, I strongly suggest it for many, reasons, but more importantly, because it's a healthy thing to do. You're going to have to reassess your culture. And by culture, I mean your community, but also the culture that you live in, because we live in a drinking culture. Sporting events are not that fun when you're sober. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of American football.
Touché.
And I found myself at times like, get me out of here. You would never catch me dead at a baseball game.
Yeah, exactly.
Never.
Exactly.
So just don't do it. But don't be afraid to try new things. REI has a great calendar of events. I did a rappelling class. I'm doing a bouldering class. I'm doing a rock climbing class. I started hiking in an inordinate amount more. I bought a mountain bike to go out and mountain bike. I was like, yeah, I'm going to try new things. I'm going to try something new. And, I have no business rappelling. I'm not going to go mountain climbing anytime soon, but I did the class just because it was like fun, man. I'm going to try it. And you surround yourself with a different group of people.
Right.
Those people, they might drink it at night or whatever, but they're not sitting there going, hey, 11 o'clock, can we drink now? And I play a lot of golf, and drinking, is a big part of golf. I've never been a golf drinker. It's just not really, because I'm bad enough at golf as it is. I don't need to add a little bit of swing lube in there to make me worse. And so, but just look around and start to reassess certain things, but understand that you're going to have to make changes. It's going to take discipline, but don't be afraid, because fear is something that you can control.
Just what we keep coming back to is how your identity changes when you go down this road, right? Whatever you want to call it a journey, be it nutrition, exercise, abstinence from alcohol. Just changing your behaviors is what's required if you're trying to make change in your life. And the way we change our behaviors is also by acknowledging who we surround ourselves with influences those behaviors. Yeah. And there's no dissimilarity between making nutrition changes and making alcohol changes, and often the two go hand in hand. And these are the hard things that come with the territory of making lifestyle change and acknowledging who you are now, and whether or not you think you have a problem with alcohol, it doesn't matter. But simply acknowledging who you want to become and who you need to become in the process, and what that person looks like, what that person does on a daily basis, who they surround themselves with, what their lifestyle's like relative to where you are now. And then making the commitment to make those changes. And so last question is, we talked about, what someone looking to perhaps considering making change with their alcohol, what would you say to someone who's on the fence about scheduling a call with BSL Nutrition, about joining our coaching program if they're on the fence?
The benefits that you're going to get are going to far exceed anything that you might have doubts about. And doubts can number in, the financial commitment, the time commitment, the stresses of counting calories and those types of things. Those are all very small things, because in the end result is going to be so much greater than that, dumping a puzzle out on the floor and looking at it and trying to figure out the puzzle. It's a 1,000-piece puzzle, and you're trying to look at it and imagine how all those 1,000 pieces are going to go together. You can't do that until you start with a corner, and you grab a corner, and then you build out the edges, and now you have the perimeter. And it takes one puzzle piece at a time for you to be able to do that. So if you're on the fence for those things, for any of those reasons, because there's 1,000 reasons that you can come up with, I strongly recommend starting with looking at the puzzle and finding that first piece. And I think making the commitment to schedule a call with you and the BSL team is that first piece, because I didn't just lose weight on this journey. I re-identified who I am in this world, and I made changes that will forever live with me. And I did that by looking at the first piece, and I started with the first piece of the puzzle. And BSL is that first piece. And so being on the fence, look, when it comes to like the sobriety thing, if you don't have a problem with alcohol, it's fine. That was me. That was for me. I was able to see all the corners of the pieces in the perimeter all at once. And I was like, oh, because I knew that was a problem. And I knew that if I made this commitment to you and started by making the commitment to you and your program, that I would have the community that I needed to be successful. And that's a big part of it. It might be some person who doesn't have a coworker that they talk with all the time about this type of stuff. They might be a transplant that moved here for a new job, and they don't have a group that they can share their challenges with, that they can share their successes with. They might be just this solo person who's sitting there going, I really want to be different. I really want to change something. The BSL community is that. They are the conduit for those successes. They're places for you to share your successes, your failures, your worries, your wants. It's a community that comes together and enables individuals to be successful, because it gives them a forum to promote themselves in. Because all of this journey and health and fitness and all these things, it's all for your mind, body, and spirit. And so if no one's there to see it, the vanity in you says, well, why would I do it? I don't have anyone to see it. You might not, have a family, close by, or a best friend that you can talk with all the time to share these things with. Well, you now have a place that you can. And you now have a community that wants to do it with you, but more importantly, wants to help you and wants you to be successful. And that's, to me, as someone who's on the fence, I look at it and say, if there's no better reason to take that first step and to move forward than to be able to share it with such a wonderful group of people. And for anyone who is on the fence who hasn't met Ben, well, he's a handsome, wonderful human being, but his wife is 1,000 times better. And she's one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life, other than my wife. She's up there. But you got guys like Joey, like that guy, man, he wants so much for you to be better. And that's what everyone here in this community is part of. They want you to be better. But more importantly, they want you to do it for you. And, aside from the vanity and all that stuff, no one's going to, yeah, you know what? People are going to see and people are going to notice. If you make the commitment, you make the change, people are going to notice. And there's the people that you didn't expect to notice. It could be the cashier behind, the grocery store line that you're checking in all the time. And she's like, wow, you used to get Twinkies and now you're getting pork chops,
Yeah.
People are going to notice, and people are, they're good natured, and they're going to sit there and say, hey, good on you. What are you doing? How can I do it? And then you get excited because you get someone to talk to, and you get something to talk to. And sure, you might have that at home, and you might have a huge family. You might have, 6 brothers and sisters that you can share everything with. Cool. Guess what? When you go to dinner and you go to Christmas, like I did this year, last year's Christmas card looked like 3 brothers swallowed a beach ball. This year, only 2 of them had a beach ball. I didn't.
Amazing, man. Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so ecstatic for you that you've been able to make such tremendous change and that you've truly committed to the process. And I think it's, it really is a different journey for everyone, but taking ownership over your health and taking the responsibility for your health. And as you said, is you don't need a community, but in our mind, you do have a responsibility to own your own decisions because people are watching, whether you realize it or not, at the checkout counter, at the golf club, at the gym. And when they see you make change, you empower them to also make change and to know that it's possible. And that if Matt can quit drinking, well, shit, anyone can quit drinking.
Yeah.
And look at what this guy has been able to do. And that, in my mind, is our responsibility as, blessed, privileged humans. If you're listening to this, then you fall in that camp. And so, yeah, I think that there's certainly ego that is relevant and should not be frowned upon, but there's also just the role that we play in society today and the need to be able to positively impact change in our life. And so you're a shining example of being able to do that by virtue of committing to truly rebranding yourself over this past year and beyond. And so I commend you for that and want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. We really, really appreciate it and are honored to have you as part of our community.
Well, it's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story with other people. It's very cliche, but if I can get one person to listen to me and say, if that guy can do it, then, and trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. Anyone who's looking at this and who's watching this, who's made it this point, if I can make the change and I can quit drinking, but like I said, I'm abstaining because at some point my relationship with alcohol changed. But in my mind, I'm like, I want to be able to do it again sometime because, it is fun. I do enjoy it.
Yep.
But if you can use that and use this as leverage to say, man, if that guy can do it, I think I can do it. I'm sure you can. And trust me, if I can, anyone else can.
You're damn straight. Absolutely, man. And again, keep up the great work and we will talk again soon. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode.